I'm glad to have you back. If you're just joining us, you're watching Morning Delight right here on Lagos Television. This morning we're looking at executive-legislative relationship in a democracy. In recent times, there's this confluence, there's this form of this relationship that so many people feel that is not good for our democracy. The argument is neither here nor there, but of course we do know that executive arm of government is the arm that really carries out all the policies of government, as well as the legislator who makes law and performs oversight functions, but of all of them in a democracy. Oftentimes when we say the legislative arm of government is combative, some say, well, it doesn't bode well for our democracy. And on the other hand, some people say when they are in cahoots with the executive, it means that there won't be some form of checks and balances that happens in that kind of environment. Well, we have some examples of where there's some form of agreement or understanding between the legislative arm of government and the executive, talking about Lagos State. How far has that bode well for our democracy? But let's put into consideration the 8th Assembly as well as the 9th Assembly versus the federal government of Nigeria. How far about that? Well, that's the conversation this morning. We've got a legal practitioner in the studio, a friend of the house, to help us put some learned, informed analysis on this conversation. It's our pleasure to welcome Mr. Bosun Osinfowora into the studio. Glad to have you join us.
Pleasure to be here.
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, we know the functions of both arms of government, very distinct as far as the delineation is concerned in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Let me talk like a legal practitioner, because according to the 1999 Constitution, as amended. But the reality is, let's take a general overview. How far has our executive and legislative arm of government served us as far as our democracy is concerned?
Well, given the task in front of them, I think they've tried their best, and they've done that to the best of their ability. In your intro, one of the things, okay, let me just start from there. People believe that the different arms must be confrontational, they must fight each other to show that they are working together. That's not the essence. Fine, if we go back to the rudimentary, the element of governance, you have three arms. We all know their functions. Legislators make law, executive, they carry out policies, then the judiciary, they interpret the laws. Now, the reason why you have these three arms is that if you concentrate power in the hand of one person, abuse is almost inevitable. Yeah. So that's why you have that. At the same time, also, you have the doctrine of checks and balances, so that this one can check this one. So that's why. But in checking, you check more of excesses, not really what the person is doing. If I know my job, I do my job, I go home. All right, so it's when I start stepping out of my job or stepping out of my boundary, that's when you actually have to say, hey, guy, take it easy. This is where you're supposed to go. This is how you're supposed to do it. But over time, we've seen funny, the judiciary is almost latent until they are called upon called into the field. But the field is always between the executive and the legislature. If you start from 1999, we started with Obasanjo having, Obasanjo, Kadigbo, the Bako, then, you had the one that came in and he looked like. So people feel that if the Senate president is not
combative,
combative, that means he's not hands-on, but that's not the way it works. You can have a bellicose human being as Senate president or the head of the House of Reps, and that wouldn't translate to him working. And most times what we've seen with some, well, let me say this with all sense of caution. Most of the time you've seen maybe the head of the House come out against the president. It has to do with things that concerns them and money, not necessarily things that concern the populace. Except recently where the issue of security has gone to a level where it's becoming unbearable. Nobody feels safe in their own domain, and in fact, the entire country feels unsafe. That's why you've seen people come out and say, we may belong to the same party, we may be the same thing, but some of those things are not being handled well. And that's where you see them coming up. But they've not been very combative like some people expect them to be, or some people would say now they are working. No, but being combative has nothing to do with work. But except in some cases too, you might find a situation where maybe the executive is trying to muzzle them. Then that's when they go all out like, no, this is not the way it should be. I mean, we saw the instance, I think, at the 8th Assembly where the legislators had to jump the fence, you know that. But those are one-off events. And that's really not why they're there. They're there to make the country go forward. They're there to make things work out fine. Now, so recently we saw the debate where they were saying, some said they can summon the president.
I was going to come to that.
So, and they were going to come up with a bill. And I'm like, the Constitution is clear. If you look at Section 89, it says that they can actually summon. Section 89, Section 88, Section 62 of the 1999 Constitution, as amended, says that they can make laws on sundry things. All right? And whatever laws they make in that regard, they can summon anybody. They can call anybody in Nigeria. That's how the Constitution puts it. And the Constitution
well, the Attorney General says, no, it's not within their purview.
The Constitution
interpretation now.
See, when it comes to interpretation of statutes, there are different ways of interpreting statutes. But the position of the Supreme Court and all the case laws that we've seen is that if interpretation will lead to ambiguity, and if another interpretation will actually work right for the system, you take the one that works right for the system. Now, looking at it from this angle, summoning the president looks like, you know, you summon someone you are above, not someone who is above you. That's the way we say it. But sometimes we bring in tradition and pettiness into these things. The reason why they're calling on the president
is to explain the
situation of things.
On that particular issue, what could the National Assembly have done to at least to resolve it? Ultimately, what they wanted was that the president should come in to explain, not just to them, to their constituencies, to Nigerians at large, what steps exactly was being taken to at least solve the security issues. And then we had the interpretation from the Attorney General of the Federation. What option did the National Assembly have for at least for everyone to get some resolution?
They have every right to summon the president based on the Constitution, based on the provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution says the Assembly can summon anybody. If you look at Section 89, you could look at Section 88, it's clear. Now, but if they have a problem with the word summoning the president,
invitation,
well, maybe they could have used the word invite, because I remember sometimes you see these words can actually create issues. Remember the last assembly where the Controller General of Customs and Dino Melai, what they were calling the Controller General for was something that was affecting the whole nation. You know, you'll be driving, some people will stop you. I mean, custom officers will stop you and they tell you that some papers didn't go through certain clearings and all that. And it was a big problem for people, and it was causing a lot of, it was a national issue. But they were so petty about it. He will wear uniform, he will wear Ankara. Come on, let him wear boxers. Just come and explain whatever you want to. I mean, that's it. You know, sometimes we get too petty. The AG say don't summon the president. They say we will summon the president. Okay, Mr. President, help us.
Could the National Assembly have approached the Supreme Court for at least an interpretation into the certain sections of the Constitution?
The issue is burning. So going to court would help, and it will throw some light. But there are decided cases. But maybe not in this light where the word summon can be used or something. But approaching the Supreme Court will be a fantastic idea. At least it will put paid to the whole thing. But whilst that is going on, okay, we will say we're not summoning him.
Can you please come over?
Can you please come over based on what the Constitution has said about your... I mean, everybody is under the Constitution. Section 1, subsection 2 says Nigeria shall be governed by... I mean, Section 1, subsection 1 of the 1999 Constitution says that the Constitution is supreme. All right?
And any other law.
So that's 1-3.
Yeah.
That any law... The chair is feeling...
Not at all.
But Section 1, subsection 2 says that everybody shall be under this law. Everybody, every institution in this enclave called Nigeria shall be under this law. Now, so the president is not above the law. The Constitution is higher than the president.
Which brings me to the question of democracy. Democracy, in other words, means for the general good of the majority of the people. So in a situation where the whole essence of the National Assembly inviting Mr. President in the first place is to throw more light to the issue of security or insecurity, as the case may be, in the country, why can't Mr. President take it upon himself? Because it's a democracy, because it affects a majority of Nigerians, to come to the National Assembly and say, you don't even have to invite me. In fact, there was a date set for the when the leadership of the National Assembly went to meet with Mr. President, and Mr. President said, okay, I'm going to go. That was the understanding. Just for the Attorney General, how does that help our democracy? When, for the general good, we're putting in sentiment into the... I'll
give you a very simple example that is way out of this. Way back, years back, when we were in school, a friend of mine was caught cheating by the girlfriend. So the girl, you know the way women will go like, oh yeah, explain, who is this? What is this? How did this happen? So the guy was quiet. He was watching, and we were watching from the fringes. And the next thing, the girl just went like, she just said something like, that's how you say something, your mother. The guy didn't allow him to finish. He just went, my mother. He started crying, throwing tantrums. How could you bring my mother into this? The girl started begging. He switched.
Tables and chairs.
Yes. Now, so that is what has happened in this case. Come and explain your function. Why is there so much insecurity in the land? Then we held on to the word someone. You summon me, the president, am I your age mate? Are we this? Are we that? That is what we're doing. The president is supposed to, is the chief security officer of the nation. Everybody is unsafe. I don't know about you, but there's this general feeling of being unsafe. You know, your kids are going to school and you're doubling your prayers like God. Yeah. You're going to normal places you go. And I mean, kidnap has gone so local now that, okay, people now, you heard the NDLEA chairman who said that people even now exchange tramadol for kidnaps. I mean, as ransom. They take tramadol as ransom. So it's bad. It's so bad. So I feel the president, with all due respect, I'm not going to say he's dodging or trying to abdicate responsibility, but he has the obligation to make sure that things go well in the country. And sincerely, except we're going to lie to ourselves, things are not going well. Security-wise, things are not going well. So everybody demands an explanation.
Okay. All right. We've been joined now by another analyst with us, a political analyst this time around. He's Dr. Dan Ekere, University Dan. Let's welcome him. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good to have you. All right. We're talking executive-legislative relationship. As a political scientist, and as
political philosopher.
Philosopher. Okay, as a socialist as well. How far would you say we have stretched the tenets of a democratic setting in our legislative arm and executive arm of governance in Nigeria?
Well, thank you. The beautiful thing is that we have the three arms in place, unlike the military era, where some will be suspended. You know, but ideally the relationship ought to be cordial. But ideally, yes, it should be cordial, and without much rancor. But at the same time, without anyone presenting itself to be subservient. You know, but the way things are going in this country, it looks as if some of the arms are so powerful, or maybe one of the arms is so powerful, to the extent that the rest are even afraid to do anything about it. I recall the other time there was an invitation, you know, by the House of Reps, that the president should come for some, you know, interactions, and there were all manner of issues. And it's not just the refusal of the president to come that was the issue, the attitude that the House put up, and the rest of them. It looked as if they were begging. It seemed as if the president is untouchable. They don't even have anything to do about it. They are even afraid to use the legal instruments that they have. Should it be, what if it were to be a case of summon? The House has, you know, enormous powers to utilize, to do whatever they can, you know, they feel like doing. Because they reserve the power as well, don't forget, to even impeach. But they were so afraid, as if, you know, the president will flog them or something like that. You know, yeah, I was really so troubled, so traumatized by that experience. So
you don't think there is a balance?
Certainly there's none. So far, there is none. You know, and again, there was a statement made by the Senate president that they should, if they are going to appear like a rubber stamp, it's just to do whatever. They shouldn't for any reason appear. I'm not talking about B. Even to appear as a rubber stamp is enough negation of the system. That's an institution of its own. In fact, if there's anything that describes and defines democracy proper, it should be the legislature. Because the other arms will always be there, even when you run, you know, a dictatorial military regime. But in a democracy, you cannot do without a lawmaking body. And as a matter of fact, the lawmaking body is the most representative, if not the only. The most representative of all arms of government. So it should be about the most important. But from the way things are going, how can you have this level of insecurity and nothing is being done? Nobody is accountable for it. There are security votes. There are billions of dollars.
No, but seriously, we need to really, because each time we talk legislative, executive, we're always looking at the federal. But it also occurs at the state level as well. And this is where most times you mentioned security votes. So we're going states now. How would you describe? Have they lived up? We heard the state governor over the weekend ran some kilometers of miles because of the attack on him. Governor Zulum up north has been, you know, faced a lot of attacks from these men who are showing us. The Southwest on their own have had to come together to form a regional security, even though that's not what it's called. Everyone domesticated it in their various states. What I recall correctly at the time when Amatekun was coming up was each governor of every state rose up to be the chief security officer of their state at the time and asked, practically demanding that we recognize that they are the chief security officers of their various states. How has that gone for us, especially now with the security situation? And what is the role of the legislative houses of each state at this point?
All right. You know, sometimes when I read, with all due respect to Governor Autumn, he thinks he can curry people's sympathy by saying headsmen are pursuing me. I ran 1 kilometer. If he likes, let him run 25 kilometers or do marathon with it. That's his problem. He should come and tell us how much he gets for security votes. Then you will know that he deserves to run around the entire state. Okay? Now, on a more serious note, if you know how much goes into this thing, and if you look at how much insecurity you have in the states, we will prosecute these people even before their tenure is over. Now, you have all the money, except you want to say you don't know how to go about security, or you don't know what to do with these funds, or you don't know how to deploy these funds to get proper security. And it's up north, even down south, even here, you go from petty stealing to there are ways you come. I saw a video last week about some young man whose laptop was stolen. I don't know if you saw it.
The drone,
and he deployed the drone and everything. Do we have drones?
Okay,
in this station.
I need
These
to.
are things that.
Interestingly, I'm getting angry about the time. We're just running out.
Yes.
The issue of relevance. I realized that virtually each arm wants to usurp the functions of the other one. the legislative arm of government ought to perform oversight function, make laws, the executive execute, right? But you have a situation where the legislative arm of government want to be relevant to their constituents, so they have some form of projects in their own, which is also a function of the executive. And oftentimes, when the executive arm of government says no, there's a shout. Okay, and there's an increase. Sometimes the executive comes with a budget. The legislative arm of government says, we know better than you as to the project cost, so we're increasing the amount of the budget at the expense of those who actually know how much we've got in our kitty. How do we marry the two? This, I just want to be relevant. How do we do it? This is democracy, for crying out loud.
Exactly. You know, the relationship there is something that raises a lot of issues. But as a matter of fact, there's nothing wrong with, you know, representatives coming up with projects and saying that this is what my constituents, yes, this is what they want. Now, but all you need to do is submit it to the executive. And they will do all the costing and eventually bring the budget to you for approval. But even the executive is equally not safe, it's not free, it's not pure in all of these. They have their own lapses. You see, because when your hands are stained, it becomes difficult for you to begin to attack the other person. Now, when you look at it from that background, you discover that they are all working together. Ordinarily, is a legislator supposed to be a contractor there? No, but that's what they've turned out to be.
Remember what happened during
exactly what, you know,
NDDC?
Yes, we saw the NDDC was a huge mess. It's not even something to talk about. Now, but we're senators, we're honorable members, and we're members of State House of Assembly have become contractors, and governors are concerned. It tells you that even the governor is not pure.
But sorry, can I say something that?
Yes.
You see, the kind of democracy we practice also give vent to that kind of practice. The people, your constituents, with all sense of responsibility, the amount that the average politician spends in his constituency is almost twice the amount that they give him as salary.
No, look at it this way.
I say that
nobody sent him.
I'm enjoying this conversation. Continue.
Yeah, nobody actually sent him to send
We can't continue.
Nobody sent him
We
to
can't
spend that money.
continue.
I say I want to serve you, and I'm spending so much. It means I'm not coming to serve you. That's something I'm looking for.
Sorry,
because if all I'm going to do is to serve you, and you say I should give you money, to hell with you.
Doctor, with all sense of responsibility, you see, our democracy is homegrown. People come to you. I've worked with a senator before as a legislative aide, way back 2007. I was like the immediate person to him. I worked with Ganiu Solomon, not PA, legislative aide. The amount of requests I get on a day from people who can't feed, to people who want to buy jam form and school fees, even to
don't they know that he's a legislator?
What he has not realized is that the kind of legislator we have, the kind of senator, is what is bringing up. Is that what happens in the U.S.?
All right, Dr. Danekere, that's not what happens in the U.S. But that's what we're going to have a part two.
We need to have a part two
of this conversation. And Mr. Bosun Osinfowora, this is not exonerating the judiciary. We're coming back to you when you are part two.
All right,
don't mind them. We want to thank both of you. We want to thank gentlemen. Thank you so much, Mr. Osinfowora, for always coming. And Dr. Danekere, thank you so much.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
We do hope we'll have you on time next time. Sorry for the traffic and all. All right. I guess that's all we can take today on the show. Tomorrow, the program continues. Morning the Light continues. I am Romelia A. Sangbedu.
I think we operate a very distinct democracy, and I hope one day we'll be able to explain what we practice actually. But for me, when you see something, say something, and of course, do something. I am Joshua Murakio. Continue to stay safe.